to the 40k Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40k with your hosts Vik VJ and David Gaylord.
Hi there and welcome. We're going to be talking today about Space Marines, but more specifically, Ultramarines. It's an army which I've been playing a lot of recently. In fact, I would say outside of Tyranids, I've been playing this the most, and I've been playing this Space Marines the most. Tyranids the second, and I haven't really played Guard for a while, just because I'm really enjoying playing some new things. Primarily in Space Marines, I've been testing Space Wolves, but I've been playing a lot of Ultramarines as well. Primarily because if I was going to play a tournament, Ultramarines is actually legal, so that's kind of what I would have to go with there. 1 second. There's a heat wave in London today, so it is boiling hot. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of recent things that have happened in the meta. Specifically, we've had points updates on 2 factions which are probably going to have a huge impact, particularly on your play experience. And I actually think Ultramarines really line up well against these changes in the meta. So let's jump into it. What I've got here is the Fireside Singles faction tier list. Now, I still believe in this a lot, but I think that if you play on a different terrain format, for example, if you play on Games Workshop, and America is our largest viewing audience, so that would be the most applicable here. I certainly think if you're playing on Games Workshop, you're likely to see people in your meta think that these 2 factions are somewhere here. And these 2 are meaning IK and CK here. So I'm thinking kind of on Games Workshop terrain format. Let me just do a little bit of quick editing here. Oh, please like me. Yep, on GW. And what we're going to actually go through here is on GW and UKTC, I think, and WTC. I think these are going to get more popular. So the meta may look something more like this, and Emperor's Children I think is going to struggle a little bit more against these armies, and I think we may have something like this emerge in the meta. I think GSC would probably get stronger as well, and any army that would line up against Knights and Chaos Knights. So why do I think this? There have been some lists coming out, and I've played against Knights. And the lists can vary quite wildly, really. If it's Chaos Knights or Imperial Knights, the lists are, 5 big Knights now and stuff. Like 5 big Knights, and you get like secondary play pieces, and then it's like 4 big Knights and like 3 armigers or 3 armigers, and then secondary pieces. It's kind of wild. I don't think I've really played in time where big Knights have been good and really fieldable in this kind of array. Now, I personally think that Imperial Knights are going to be a little bit stronger than Chaos Knights. I think they benefit a lot from the detachment, the army rule, which, 6, if it's a detachment rule, whatever, 6 up, feel no pain, reroll a hit or wound roll. It's either hit and wound or hit or wound roll. It's kind of wild. That is incredibly good and benefits greatly the increase in total wound count. So some of these knights now typically have like 26 wounds. So realistically, your knight is sitting somewhere at about 30.3 wounds in total, which is a lot. So I think given this, I really wanted to play against them and kind of see what just a like Ultramarine list would do. And I wanted to try a couple of different things because there's been some changes that can affect Imperium armies here as well. Now, this is going to be a video specifically on Ultramarines, so obviously you can now include kind of some of these big knights into your Ultramarine army, and actually they're reasonably competitive, but I don't think they're going to be optimal overall. I think where Imperial Knights get really interesting for souping options are actually particularly in Guard here, for example. We've got Siege Regiment Detachment, which I think is a good detachment for that. It can, for example, give a knight stealth that's not locked to Astra Militarum units. And it can go ignore cover on targets, which can amplify the knight's shooting damage. So having a big knight that can shoot high OC can potentially be good in Siege. Then we've got, I think Deathwatch are a good candidate for that as well. including something like Canis Rex and Death Watch, I think would give it a good kind of centerpiece. And that's basically at the cost of an Indomitus kill team plus one other thing. So that gives you a bit of a toughness skew, can help you take down targets, give you a lot of OC, a lot more staying power. Now, why I don't think they benefit a lot in Ultramarines specifically is that they're not going to benefit from Oath of Moment rule here. I'm going to double, triple check this right now. I would be surprised if they benefited from the Oath of Moment rule. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go share this tab instead. If your faction is Ipsistartes at the start of a command phase, select one unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of your next command phase, that unit is your Oath of Moments. Each time a model with this ability makes an attack, that targets your Oath of Moment target, you can reroll the hit roll. Now I'm going to go and assume Imperial Knights, that Imperial Knights do not have the Oath of Moment ability. Just to double check. They do not. Okay, cool, great. We're safe. that'd be a little bit of a doozy in the video. Okay, back to here. Now that's a big reason why I don't think Knight souping into Ultramarines is really going to be good enough. Now, Ultramarines has a lot of data sheets, obviously, so you don't really need to compensate a lack of datasheet power by putting a Knight in, which is where I think these Imperial armies probably seek the biggest benefit. Sisters of Battle, you could obviously play an Imperial Knight there as well. Okay, a couple more things. The Knight you would want to include, and if you're playing in a Knight-orientated meta, now think about this, for example. You have Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights. This is just me, but if I was to play one or the other, I probably wouldn't collect the other codex, right? So that's to say that people that have 3 or 4 armies, their 3 or 4 armies may include a Knight army, but it would not include both Knight armies. So I think the amount of people that can begin to field a Knight army into the meta in, say, next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time is going to be very, very high. So I would expect Knights to be a very large or much larger percentage of the total player base going forward here. Now, that brings us to souping in Knights. Knight players will probably be taking Knight loadouts and specific Knights, like Atropos maybe, or just Canis, that are good against Knights, maybe a Despoiler with Melters or Thermals, in hope that when they play the Mirror, they're more effective in that league, right? A Knight is probably great in Grey Knights as well, now I'm thinking about it. So that kind of disincentivizes us to play Knights and Ultramarines, because now we're activating a part of our opponent's army because we're playing a Titanic unit that their anti-Knight units will be actually good against, right? Okay, so that's why I don't think you really want to include one in Ultramarines. So yeah, now luckily, why don't we go through why I think Ultramarines are a big benefactor of this? Ultramarines probably have the best army rule. Well, the best Space Marines have the best faction rule, but if you're playing Ultramarines, you get as your army rule, which is you get +1 to wound versus Oath target. That is extremely good when your opponent is fielding 5 big things, right? If you're playing Gilman, Bobby G, you get to Oath 2 targets. So 2/5 of their army, you're getting 4 rerolls to hit and +1 to wound against. Really good, because a lot of these Knights now have come down in toughness, which doesn't really matter, but then none of them have like a 2-up save anymore, from what I can see. I looked through the Imperial Knights. I don't think there's one that has a 2-up save, but it's like 700 points. So they're all 3-up saves now. What does that mean? It means like all of your little guns that do chip damage are just going to be rerolling to hit, wounding on 5s, and maybe a 3-up save or 4-up if you're AP1. So you can chip through these a lot easier now. Okay, next reason why we don't want to play at 9. Ultramarines have, in combination with Oath of Moments, the Combi Lieutenant, and whatever array of las cannons or demolisher cannons you want to take, the ability to hit Knights with full rerolls and wound them on 2s, potentially rerolling 1s if you name their expansion objective. Now, Knights don't have a lot of counterplay to this, realistically speaking. If you name your opponent's expansion objective, for example, because the Knight is so large, it's very, very easy to get an angle against it. So you're going to get reroll 1s against that objective very often. So what that means is that activating a +1 to Oath on a target with reroll 1s gives you really, it gives you a very consistent damage base to shoot into Knights. And Knights are a stat check army. That is 100% true. Okay, so why don't we jump into some lists? So I thought, what would be cool, David? I played a game with this earlier today. What would be cool is if we don't want to. So the changes with Ultramarines, with Manius, Calgar, and Gilman no longer synergizing as well together, means that you don't get the +1 CP because Gilman has to be your warlord if you take Gilman. So, and then Gilman is once per battle round as well. So that reduces CP count by about 10. Realistically, it reduces your CP count by about 8 because you're not always going to do cards. You're going to discard some, whatever. You're going to maybe not do some, so you deny a challenger card. So you're missing about 8 CP. Okay, so I thought, well, why don't we try and make some Ultramarines list without Gilliman? And for the flavor of kind of this month, I guess, let's try and include Canis Rex. So this is kind of a list I liked, and it's a list I played. I've got Manius Calgar. I would always play him, just absolute auto include. I've got Uriel Ventress here. He's the deep strike guy that can join Blade Guard vets to give them deep strike, and he also has the Vict aura. And then we've got Gravis Captain with a 2-up, 5-up. All of my lists include Manius Calgar, Gravis Captain with a 2-up, 5-up enhancement, Lieutenant with combi weapon. I've got 6 Blade Guard vets, Company Heroes. Company Heroes are always in the list. 2x5 Scouts. Now I've got the kind of core of the list, I would say, which is going to be 3 Ballistas Dreadnoughts and then 1 shooting platform. The shooting platform we've got here is just a Repulsor. We've got a Gladiator Reaper alongside as well, and then big old Canis Rex. So what you'll notice is that the Repulsor is a bit of a weird choice, but let me go through the thinking here. I've been playing a Repulsor Executioner a lot in Space Wolves, and the Repulsor is actually very, very good for 180 points. 180 points gives you a toughness 12 unit, 3-up save, 16 wounds, with a big transport capacity. So you can put your entire Manius Calgar unit into it. If you're playing a Repex, you can get the Gravis Captain back in it. You can get the Combi Lieutenant back in it. You can put Blade Guard with Uriel Ventress inside of it, for example. It's actually really versatile. And then when you've got the reactive move, the actually just getting back inside of it is really useful too. So when you consider that it's got like a bunch of small shots, then it's got 1 Twinling Las Cannon, which is great because you're shooting with Oath of Moments, so you have reroll to hit anyway. And then 2 Las Talons. You get kind of 3 Las Cannon hits here as well on top of that. So it's a bit different profile from a Ballistas Dreadnought, but it's also toughness 12 and has 4 more wounds than a Ballistas Dreadnought and has transport capacity. So I'm kind of big on the Repulsor right now. It's kind of annoying for armies to kill. Okay, kind of key elements I've read here. Manius +1 CP per turn. So we're going to be able to fuel a lot of kind of secondary redraws. We're going to be able to grenade a lot. We could slip units into doctrines, but that's not as required here. We have a Gladiator Reaper, of course. And before I go into the other key elements, the Gladiator Reaper is quite good against Knights in particular as well. You just have 16 shots from the Tempest Bolter. You've got 6 from the Iron-Tailed Heavy Stubber, and then 12 from the Dev Wound Gun. The Dev Wound Gun is going to do, kind of 3 to 4 mortals just on itself. The Iron-Tailed Heavy Stubber and the Tempest Bolter are going to do like 3 to 4 damage as well. So it can pretty reliably put in, 6 to 7 damage into a Knight just by itself anyway. And then that's in its worst matchup. So it really goes to show how versatile the Reaper is. Okay, we've got Deep Strike Blade Guard Vets with Vict. Now, ultimately, this unit here is not that great into Knights, and I know I'm talking about Knights a lot, but they're really good for a Deep Strike in Heroic and then break up a fight after that, because you can Deep Strike with Vict, and that's something I've really loved in Space Wolves, for example. I've been playing Logan Grimnar and the Terminator Squad, and this is kind of pseudo functions like that. It's the only way we could get like a reliable Deep Strike Vict aura with a combat unit, and given that you've got a lot of CP to fuel, rapid ingressing it somewhere into those combat matchups, maybe you're playing against like Emperor's Children, you're playing against CSM, Bio, like Blood Angels, for example. That's going to be a really useful unit. Okay, and then we've got the Repulsor for a transport and cheap hull. The macro strategy, as I see it, you're trying to rapid ingress your Canis Rex and or your Uriel Ventress often. But you really want to play classically aggressive with your Ballistas Dreadnoughts, and against combat matchups, split the Ballistas up, pull people onto the objectives when they want to charge it, rapid ingress Heroic onto it, etc., etc. Use your reactive move with Manius to stage, and then get back in the Repulsor. Same with the Gravis Captain and Lieutenant on objectives, reactive moving all the time. Okay, I would say Canis Rex fills an interesting position here, but depending on your terrain format, he can be a little bit difficult to activate. I would primarily probably play him to hit my opponent's expansion, but realistically, if you need to start him off the board, he can be difficult to make work because he is quite easy to screen. So try and get him to start on the board as much as possible. If you're going to be playing a big knight, you're going to be really cautious about putting them in reserve, especially against fast armies. Okay, one thing I wanted to touch on here was Ballistus Dreadnoughts. This is actually the main reason why I think that Ultramarine is going to be very good if you're playing into a meta that has a lot of knight players in it. And I think on Games Workshop terrain, big knights were already good and knights were doing well. So I think this will flood the meta with knights if you're playing on GW terrain. Ballistus Dreadnought. Okay, Ballistus Dreadnought looks at a knight. It has two las cannons, two missile launchers. Las cannons hit on threes, rerolling, wound on twos, and then the rockets hit on threes, rerolling, wound on fours. So whenever you look at a knight, a Ballistus Dreadnought kind of comfortably does between like 5 and 9 damage to a knight, which, given the fact that it's a 2-up save unit with toughness 10, access to AOC, and 12 wounds, is actually really hard for knights to kill. So if you've got 3 Ballistus looking at a knight, there is every world of possibility you're just going to kill it. Now, if it's Imperial Knights, you might need one more thing, but it's actually really hard for knights on the counter to kill Ballistus Dreadnoughts. They're going to need like 2 knights shooting activation to kill 1 Ballistus Dreadnought. So you've got a huge range advantage, and you've got a damage advantage into that, because you've got a tankiness advantage as well. So what you can do is you can use your Ballistus Dreadnoughts to shoot down angles, then stage your Manius Calgar unit up, and maybe your Blade Guard veteran unit up, bring your knight player in closer, and then, because to shoot your Ballistus Dreadnoughts, then you can advance and charge, and have a turn where you can easily kill 2 big knights. You can easily kill 3 big knights. So I think Ballistus Dreadnoughts stocks are going way up in value. I mean, the unit was already insanely good. So, I would say definitely invest into it. Now, Chaos Knights have access to -1 damage for 2 CP, but Manius Calgar's unit with Oath Moment absolutely slaps the knight up in combat as well. He just hits on 2s rerolling, wounds on 4s rerolling with 6 attack, so it's probably between 4 and 5 wounds. They take 6 ups against them. But if you go for +1 AP, they get no save. He can put 12 to 15 damage to a knight quite easily. Then you have all the Vitrix Guard and the regular attacks, which is going to be 16 attacks that wounds on 5s, hitting on 2s, rerolling. So 16, you're going to be pushing like 5 saves through there, 5 to 6 saves there at AP3, and they get 6 ups. That's going to be another close to 10 damage. That's almost a knight done just from Manius' unit, and you get a shoot before that as well. So there's a lot of damage to take out these big targets. Alrighty, let's go on to the next list. So that was a list without Gilman, and specifically trying to play Canis Rex. So I thought I'd share maybe a Gilman-style list here as well. This is a list I would probably jump up and play. I played a list very similar to this, but I previously was playing JPIs, and I upgraded a Vindicator to a Repulse Executioner. I played that yesterday for a couple of games. Now, this list here, we've got Manius, Gilman, Gravis Captain, Combi Lieutenant. I've got 5 Intercessors here, which work really nicely by sticking, then jumping in the Repulsor afterwards on turn 1. Really, really good. If you don't need to screen your backfield like against Knights, you don't. Maybe against Death Guard, not so much, because they're going to 6 into you anyway. That can work out really, really well. We've then got Company Heroes, of course. We've got 3 Inceptors. Now, depending on your meta, you can play these however you want. But, Plasma is always good with Oath Moments if you've got bigger targets. Bolters, maybe. But Plasmas, if you're unsure, is the best go-to here, I think. We've got a one-man Scout Squad, so I'd love to have more, but I upgraded the Scouts to Intercessors here. 3 Ballistus, 1 Reaper, 1 Repulsor, 1 Vindicator. So our firing base here is really big and really threatening to any Knight player. This is a classic Gladius list. It's basically just a riff off my last one I played at BFS. One thing I wanted to touch on, which is if you're struggling with the new CP changes, don't spend a lot of CP on, say, putting a unit into Dev Doctrine or just to get Storm of Fire +2 AP. Like, don't do that as much. Maybe forego like a CP reroll on a wound roll, on a save reroll if it's not as important, something like that. And I found if you do that, then you've got plenty of CP to play with anyway. Okay, Vindicator here is a kind of nightmare for these big knight players as well. Now, I've kind of fallen out of love with the Vindicator, to be honest with you. Typically, this list here plays 2 Vindicators, and this package of 3 Ballistas, Reaper, Vindicator, Vindicator was the exact package I played previously. And I still think that's a really good shooting base for sure. But, I'm kind of big on the Repulsor these days. With the Las Talons, you get 3 reliable shots through anyway. You then get a kind of tankier, pseudo tankier vehicle that has transport options, which is really nice against armies like Blood Angels, for example. So I'm kind of big on the Repulsor. Then we've got Gilman as well. So, okay, Gilman. I still think Gilman is really good, and I really enjoyed this list when I was playing it. The way people play Gilman is usually wrong in that they play him really cagey. I love to just play him where it puts my opponent in a tough position with low op to try and dedicate to killing him or not, and then the game breaks wide open after that. Now, Gilliman himself, being lone op, is really hard and nice to shoot. They need to be within 12, then he can get back up, or they need to be within 12, then he can just pass the saves. He's not like a vehicle, but he is a monster. He's got a 2-up save with access to AOC, so very hard to commit into. Now, obviously, he can go through walls and advance and charge, so himself, if you're hitting a knight on an objective that you have reroll ones against with Oath of Moment, he's going to be hitting on 2s rerolling with 7 attacks, lethal, so then 6 to wound, 2s rerolling. He's going to push basically 7 hits through, 7 wounds through, 7 saves at AP4 damage for, basically 28 damage into a big knight. So Gilliman more or less one-shots a big knight. Really, really nice guy. Super hard to interact with. Knight players then have to try and clean him up afterwards. He might get back up. Really frustrating model, I think, for Knight players. So this is a Gladius list. I really like this. You've got the Inceptor package here, so you've got a pretty reliable scoring base. You don't need to pressure armies necessarily. You've got good OC control with the Ballista Dreads. Scouts can up you downy. Incest is sticky at the home. Your backfield is safe. All around this list is really nice. You got the rapid ingress on the Vindicator, probably, or if it's a melee and if it's a more open board, like some of the UKTC ones on the sides now, put the Reaper and the Vindicator in reserve. If you're against infantry models, combat armies, put the Reaper in reserve, for example. Really, really nice. Okay, that's Gladius list. Now, the third Gladius list of tonight. This is if you don't want to play Manius if you don't want to play Gilliman. So I think this is an interesting direction to go. It kind of plays a lot differently, though, I think. So let's jump into it. Manius, Gravis Captain. We've got a Judicia, Lieutenant Combi Weapon, 5 Intercessors, 6 Blade Guard, 4 Company Heroes, of course, with Manius, 5 Vanguard Veterans with Inferno Pistols. Then we've got 3 Ballistas, Reaper, Repulsor, a Vindicator. So we've got a huge shooting base in this one. You can see you get a lot more points when you're not playing Gilliman here. Basically +1 hull here, which is the Vindicator, which is really nice. And we've got a Calidus Assassin as well. So we're still getting that Vectora. We're still getting uppy downy. Our backline we also secure with the Intercessors, and we've got the Scout Squad on top of that. So this is definitely a list where you're going to be focusing on doing secondaries really well, and then in the combat matchups, you're going to have the Judicia with Fight First with the Repulsor, which Manius' unit can get back into, or you can reactive move back into the Repulsor with the Judicia unit, for example. So you can play the Repulsor aggressively, charge in, and then be within reactive move to get back in the Repulsor against combat armies. Really powerful. Then they have to commit to killing this Repulsor with a combat army. Ooh, gets dicey after that. So that's a nice package, by the way, if I didn't mention it. The Repulsor and these combat units, instead of in the combat matchups where you would have, in the shooting matchups where you could reactive move back behind a wall so they can't shoot you, with the Repulsor, you play that aggressively as well at the same time, near the zone that you're charging into. Then you can fight over here, lock a couple of units up. If they reactive, if they move out of combat, you can reactive move back into the Repulsor. They have to kill the Repulsor. Really tough position for them to be in. We've got 5 Vanguard Vets here as well. 95 points. I said before I didn't really like Assault Intercessors. These guys, you are going to need to contest an opponent's objective probably at least once, and these guys are a good way of doing that, I think. Inferno Pistols mean that they can just move 12 with Oath of Moments, maybe pop a Rhino, and then maybe charge 10 Yardsmen or something like that. More or less, you're going to use this unit here to just out-OC your opponent on one go. So there we go, guys. This has been the No Gilliman list. If you play this, I'd really love to know how you do. I think this is a really good all-rounder. It's a little bit light on the melee counterpunch, or the melee aggressive play, I would say. But instead of playing aggressive with melee, you could play a little bit more secondary-orientated game plan. Okay, I hope you guys have enjoyed. This has been me on the kind of Ultramarines train. I think they're in a great spot now, and if you're looking to play a tournament soon with all these night lists coming out in GW terrain potentially, I would say, look, some of these night lists have a really big footprint. There's every chance in the world you can hide your entire army, and if you go first, the chances are you're just going to kill one knight in their deployment zone, because getting an angle is not going to be too tough. Or if they want to prevent you from shooting, you can always just bring stage where they can't shoot you, next turn shoot them. So if they deploy too far back, they're not going to be able to activate. A lot of these night lists might have like one good unit that's against hulls. Just bring it out on the first turn. If they use it, you kill it straight away, and then that's done and gone. Then you ballistuses, your Repex is going to shoot consistently. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the Fireside.